You're being priced out of hotel accommodation in Darwin and Perth in particular. So let's, instead of having 3 nights in Darwin, we have 1 night in Darwin and 2 nights in Katherine. Let's get people out into the regions. Let's use that as the opportunity for actually dispersal. Let's use it for a great opportunity to get that development of our business strength. In the meantime, as the Minister's saying, let's go forward with that investment strategy, which is a longer term strategy. I mean, you're not going to get that inventory back up under 3, 4, 5 years, but we have to survive in the meantime. So we've got to come back to that different way of doing business, looking at how we can be greater in our dispersal attributes. So that's one way that I would suggest that process can go through.
Okay, we have a couple of questions which I will pass to Andrew because I believe that he will be, I had a preview of his presentation and I believe that he will answer some of these questions in the presentation. So I'm just going to focus on mining and tourism on this panel for now. So the Minister talked about localization, that that you had given extra funding to localization in China to build a Chinese website, right? And I just want to ask Robbie, I mean, we want to talk about localization and how you attract travelers from Asia, right? And you have just set up a joint venture in Vietnam. So how important is localization in bringing new travelers to Australia at this moment?
Critical. I think the localisation is the nub to it, and our approach has probably been a little bit different, I suppose, than others. I mean, our model for Asia is actually to form joint ventures with local players. So in Vietnam, for example, we formed a joint venture with a company called Team Mean Holdings. They own 10 hotels in Vietnam. They run a tours company as well. Very experienced local players, very well connected, good customer base within Vietnam. What they didn't have was inventory beyond the Vietnamese shores. So we formed a joint venture. We built a site which is local language. We built the site so that people can transact on the site in a way that's appropriate for their particular country. So, for example, in Australia, a lot of Australians are very used to booking online, paying with a credit card. In Vietnam, for 2 reasons, people do not like paying with a credit card. One is a lot of people don't have the card to start with, but secondly, more importantly, the black economy is a big part of it in Vietnam. People would prefer to pay cash than pay with a card. Now, that's a very big restriction to actually getting people to actually transact online. So we built a site where you can pay with cash through channels, but we are pushing the Australian inventory suite that we've got 8,000 operators across the whole country onto that site and getting exposed to the Vietnamese market. So that's the sort of approach we want to take throughout Asia, and we're working in other markets to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, I have a question here. It says, could you please ask the Honourable Minister why Cairns should turn its back on the Japanese at the very time when Jetstar has now launched its new joint venture in Japan? The Chinese travel during the Spring Festival, whereas Japan travels year-round.
I didn't say we'd turn our back on Japan, but I said just don't rely on Japan. Because that was the culture of tropical North Queensland. Japan would always be there, we didn't have to chase other markets. The Gold Coast had a far more aggressive strategy. Not just on Japan and China, but also, for example, they chased that niche market in the Middle East. And they've done well out of it. So I'm simply saying to Japan, to tropical North Queensland, yes, Japan, but there are other markets. You must diversify your local economy.
Right. So if you had a wish list, I mean, the Minister has put together a shopping list of destinations where they should build. So if you had a wish list, what's the one product that you think Queensland must have?
Umbrellas?
I agree. You could sell them by the billions.
No, look, I don't think there is a one answer to that, because again, if you look at the suite of different product that we offer, from the Gold Coast to Brisbane to the Sunshine Coast to Cairns and Port Douglas to the islands, that there is such a diversity of experiences. I think that the key for us is to make it easier for. I think the first thing we've got to do is make it so that the people who are operating now make a buck, so that they can reinvest some money, so that they are growing. Like Clive Palmer buying this place. I mean, that's absolutely spectacular. I mean, apart from filling the TV every night news with whatever he said today, which is always really entertaining, to have somebody like that invest in a place like this and take what is already a lovely product and turn it into something more special will benefit this entire region. Right. Because, you know, we're all here tonight, we'll be off to restaurants, and, you know, we're at the surf club this morning. The money flows throughout the whole community.
So other than your wish list is not one product, it's more individuals like Clive Palmer, okay?
Yeah, more crazy rich people, I think.
Okay, I will get to Robbie, who may be a crazy rich person waiting.
Robbie most certainly is a crazy rich person.
Greg, do you have a wish list? I mean, Queensland Resources Council, you must be rich, right? You must be rich.
No, that's actually one of the myths in the industry at the moment, is that if you have a mine, you've got a license to print money. We've seen the sad closure of a coal mine recently, which I think is a salutary wake-up call to everyone about the cost side of the industry that Martin referred to before. We are at that leading edge of the cost curve. Miners in our industry on average are earning about $113,000 a year, so there's good disposable income there that's flowing back into local economies and communities. I guess we would obviously like to grow our sector in a sustainable and responsible way, employ more people, let them enjoy those sorts of incomes and opportunities, and have that wealth then flowing back through the community.
Okay. So Robbie, I mean, a crazy rich person, hopefully. I mean, the online travel is booming. I mean, Make My Trip is capitalized at nearly $800 million. Your profits are up, even though your shares are down, which I guess you must be wondering why. Where would you invest your money if you could invest in Australia? Where would you build?
First, correct the record. I'm the hired help. I'm not the crazy rich person that set the company up. Where would I invest my money, or what would I do? First of all, I'd build attractions in certain Australian markets to bring people. I think again, it was Clive's idea to put a casino on the Sunshine Coast. I reckon that's a great idea, because you've got to look into the minds of the traveller coming to our markets and look at what they're looking for. And I've spent a fair bit of time in China and India and just talking to, you know, the middle class that we're talking about trying to bring to the country. And one thing's for sure and certain, they like Australia, they love Australia, they see it as a great destination. There's all the concerns about what about they eat, will I get the right food and all that sort of stuff. But they're looking for a different experience. They're looking for what we've got on offer. Open spaces, clean, green, you know, uniqueness, and we've got all that.
So why would you build a casino to keep them indoors?
Well, they're also looking. They're looking for those experiences, but they're also looking for the things which they do of natural fact. And look at Singapore, for example. For years and years and years, resisted putting a casino in place. It is now acting as a real catalyst for bringing more Chinese people to Singapore when they've got Macau on offer and other destinations. You just need a balanced portfolio. You need to make sure you tick all the boxes, and you know, there's no denying it. There are certain things that we could actually add to the smorgasbord that we have on offer. I think we need to look at that, and that'll be what I do.
Right. I had an interview with the CEO of Singapore Tourism Board, and she said now that 80% of Singapore's visitors come from Asia. That's up from about 65 to 80. So, Peter, I mean, how do you? I believe the problem is also a seasonality, isn't it? You know, there are times when the regional centres are really busy. So, do you think you can come up with a method or a process where you can, you know, say balance out the peaks and troughs?
Yes, I think you can. I mean, we're addressing that issue all the time, and our marketing internationally, whether it's a small company or a large company, will address those particular issues. You know which months of the year to push Northern Australia, for example. You know the best months to visit Southern Australia. So the timing is what the industry is coping with at the moment. I think that some of the other areas that we can actually really work on is that development phase of products into the region. I think we've got to really understand that 80% or over 80% of our industry is small business. Small business are operating in effect by the seat of their pants in many cases. Now we have to, from an ATEC perspective and from an industry perspective, make sure that the viability is there. So as Robbie is saying, is if the Asian tourists want to actually come and experience all of those other things, then we have to make sure that the viability is there for the entire industry. So it's a stepped process. You can have development in one phase, you can have the major accommodation facilities, attractions and everything else in the major centres, but you still, in the periphery of all of that, you still have to have the viability of the industry. And again, from the government's point of view, all three levels of government, I think there needs to be every method put out to the industry to support them, to actually allow them to do that, so to allow everything else to catch up.
Okay. So,
Can I go just quickly, because I think that's probably the most important question of the day. Because if you honestly look at your business, or look at your destination, or look at my role, and we've set these 2020 targets there, we have no chance in the world of hitting those targets if we keep doing what we've been doing. What we've traditionally done is we look at the Tourism Forecasting Council forecast and go, all right, well, we'll aim for 3.1% growth. And we sort of aim for mediocrity because that's what we're supposed to grow. To hit the 6.5% growth that we're going to need, of course we need to protect high season. In Queensland, if school holidays at the Gold Coast isn't full, then none of us are doing our job properly. But if you just go on spending your money, making sure you're full during high season, you're cactus. You're never going to get there. What we've got to do is come up with the clear strategies that broaden the shoulder seasons more effectively, to go out and get the right events that are going to help us to fill up low season. Noosa Food and Wine Festival is on here in a few weeks' time, and that is plonked right in the middle of a weekend that would normally be empty. Now it's full. So we have to plan for the future, but we've also got to be just more creative and more aggressive in filling up those times of the year when we're not used to, which is why the mining sector is such a huge opportunity, because we can talk to these people about visiting Queensland destinations at a time of year when other people aren't going there. We've just got to be more flexible in looking at our source markets and thinking about how we communicate with them.
okay, so Robbie, is that a problem that technology can solve? Because I remember that a couple of years ago at Web and Travel, you talked about how online travel in the future was in the long tail, which is kind of aggregating what you're talking about, 80% of businesses being small in Queensland. Can technology solve that problem?
Yeah, technology is perfectly placed to fill peaks to fill the troughs that occur in between peak seasons. Absolutely, but that's only one part of the equation. I think. I agree completely with Anthony's comments about trying to attract people within our country to travel within our country. I think that's key, and I think the Oprah program a couple of years, 2 years ago, actually helped with that. It made people aware domestically of what we had on offer. It wasn't just pitched at the American market. But I think the challenge that still remains with trying to attract that wealth in the mining sector to travel domestically is still the cheapness, the relative cheapness of certain locations within Asia. And I think that's the challenge. I think we have to somehow work at ways of making our product more appealing to our own market to fill some of those troughs.
Okay, and so build up the domestic demand as well. Okay.
Absolutely, the domestic market.
But you're responsible for getting Australians out to Asia with your outbound.
We do that, but the biggest part of our business, of whatif.com, is actually Australians travelling within Australia, in business travel and leisure travel. We have brands operating offshore which are trying to bring Asia market into Australia, but we are very much a domestic player.
Right, so we have a couple of comments from the floor. It says, Tourism Queensland, TNQ would love to diversify markets, just assist us with aviation access. So what are you doing to get more airlines in here?
That is worth a clap. I will suck up to any airline that I can get my hands on, I promise you. And there's an enormous amount of work that's been going on. The number 1, 2, and 4 goals are specific routes into Cairns. If we could open up Singapore Cairns or China into Cairns, it would kickstart things and get things moving again. The new government has put a huge chunk of money on the table for airline incentives, and the timing's probably quite good now because, again, a new relationship with Tourism Australia. We team up, we do it together. Cairns Airport, more money, more aggressive approach from them. And we're pitching as a team. And we have a few leads at the moment that might progress into something. The airlines over the last few years have had a tough time too, so they've postponed a lot of aircraft deliveries. Those deliveries will now start to flow through over the next year or two, so they're going to be looking for places to put these aircraft. Now's the time for us to be standing in front of every single one of them saying, hey, we're here and we want your business and we'll make sure you're full.
Okay.
We've also got a policy which says any international carrier that's prepared to go into a regional airport such as Cairns gets priority access to our capital city slots. So that's about trying to create incentives to those international carriers to actually start with a regional airport such as Cairns.
Okay, so we have a question for the Minister. With your responsibility for both mining and tourism, what are the lessons you think that we can learn from mining?
Firstly, we've got a resources boom at the moment, but it was touched on that we also have slumps. It's the nature of the mining industry. The challenge we've got as a nation at the moment is the resources, to use this resources boom to create opportunities, but in doing so to continue to work with industries such as tourism, education and a whole variety of other industries to make sure that when that slump occurs, that we're sufficiently diversified and created other industry opportunities which guarantees ongoing prosperity for Australia. Because remember this about mining, it's a big wealth creator, it's actually not a big employer. Tourism is a big employer that yes is challenged to some extent by the resources sector at the moment. We'll get through this challenge and potentially in the long term the pressures are also going to create new opportunities for the industry in the future.
So one quick question, another one for you. You're obviously the man in the hot seat. Would you be amenable to a tax break or tax incentive or deduction for Australians to travel in their own country?
No.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up.
Let's be very frank. We've got 120 million accumulated days of annual leave in Australia at the moment, for which you get a 17.5% annual leave loading. Yes, you do.
Disagree, obviously.
Workers' annual leave, they get a 17.5% loading. The issue is challenging people to actually have a holiday at home. I will not argue at the cabinet table for a tax deduction to have a holiday in Australia.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up. And we're going to wrap up the panel with one question, and very quickly, briefly. Okay, so what's the one takeaway you want your audience to walk away with? The one thing that they must do to get mining and tourism to work together?
Keep listing your inventory on whatif.com.
Peter?
Diversifying product and not forgetting the indigenous heritage of this country and the linkage that it has with our natural landscape. So that's diversifying, using the mining boom to get people out into the country.
Right.
At a state level, seek to engage with us through the Newman government's 4 pillars policy, in which you are one of the 4 pillars along with ourselves.
I think have an open mind and ask yourself, when did you last try something new, try a new market? Because there are opportunities out there. If we push ourselves into uncomfortable areas, there are some great opportunities that the worst is behind us, things are picking up, now's the time to think a bit differently.
Okay.
There's an obvious alliance in regional Australia between tourism and the resources sector. The mining boom is creating opportunities with new infrastructure, hotels, airport capacity, etc. How does tourism piggyback off the resources sector? That's the real challenge.
So please join me in thanking the panelists. Thank you. And now it's